Hi, this is Charles Evans, Music Director of the Long Bay Symphony, back with another installment of Speaking of the Arts. Today's episode is a continuation of my discussions with members of the Long Bay Youth Symphony String Quartet that recently gave a complete performance of Dvořák's famous American Quartet. Previously, I talked with the group's cellist, Colin Scholl. This time, I'll be speaking with the rest of the members, violist Grace Leonard and violinists Gabbi Smith and Isabella about their general musical experiences as well as their thoughts about preparing the Dvořák. And, as in our last episode, we'll close with a segment from the group's performance, the scherzo and finale movements. I know you'll enjoy it. Hi, I'm here now with Grace Leonard, who's the violist in the Dvořák quartet you're going to hear in just a minute. Grace, it's good to have you with me. Appreciate your coming out.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You just finished your 10th grade year, right?
11.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking Colin.
It's okay.
Got it in my brain. Yeah, and you're at St. James?
Yes.
And so I'm curious about two things, like when you started playing.
Okay, I started playing in the beginning of my 6th grade year in middle school orchestra class.
Okay, and why the viola? That's the...
Yeah, I've actually asked this quite a lot.
Of course.
I was actually, when Miss Purcell, she's a teacher at St. James, went to the 5th grade classroom and kind of presented all the instruments to try and recruit people up into her classroom. She presented the viola as like the middle ground between the violin and the cello. And 5th grade me thought the violin was like a little too high for my ear. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to lug around a cello, so I was like, this is the obvious option. Looking back, she was lacking violists really seriously, so maybe she was pushing that one a little bit more than the others, but I'm glad she did because I love the viola.
Yeah, and it's funny, a lot of great composers really gravitated toward the viola. I think Beethoven played a lot of viola. Mm-hmm. Certainly Dvořák was a violist.
Yes.
So they know how to write nice melodies. It's not the same kind of thing that perhaps in early Haydn quartets where the first violinist gets all the juicy bits and everybody else goes check, 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 check. Although violists are often chided for that. For the most part, you're accompanying. And of course, I'm sure people have heard their viola jokes out there. But you know, you've heard the one about perfect pitch, right? Yeah. We don't need to go into that. But like of all the things you've done, say in particular with the Youth Symphony, I would say, because you've won the concerto competition, you've played a lot of orchestral music, and now, thankfully, we've gotten into chamber music. Of those, or any of it really, what's your favorite part?
I really, really have loved the chamber music we've gotten into this year. Yeah. It's been absolutely amazing. It's been really, really fun to work with 3 of my really close friends in a setting where we're all working. I kind of like to describe it as we're all practicing with each other because we're all thinking so critically about the music at hand, and that's been such a nice change. Like, I do think critically about things in orchestra, but it's nice to think about, what is this part doing? What can I do to make the quartet better for all of us? And it's been really, really fun. It's
a much more proactive thing, and I think it's such a necessary component of mature musicianship. We get the comment all the time if people find out when the symphony, for example, does a concert and say, oh, you must have been practicing for weeks. It's like, no, people get the music, they come in, we do, for a big thing, 4 rehearsals, sometimes for a pops thing, only 1. Mm-hmm. And they I explain to them, they know what to do. Mm-hmm. So they and what I term it as is radar. Your ears are out, and you're listening for what other people are doing, and there's no greater tool to learn that than in chamber music.
Yes. I feel like chamber, especially this year, it's helped me become a better orchestral player.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've found myself as this year has progressed, looking not only what my section is doing, but also looking at the other sections to see what they're doing, try and match my bowings, the articulation, precise rhythm, all of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's funny because there's always an ongoing sense. There always has been with music. Like how does music benefit in an extra musical way? Because there's always been this selling of the correlation between math and music.
Mm-hmm.
Say, well, you know, musician kids are smarter in math because they're thinking that way.
I think differ.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it doesn't necessarily apply. But you don't know, you might be better than you would have been, you know.
Maybe.
But I think it's this idea, the more I think about what you say about being aware of everything, I like to open that up into a social thing. If you're more aware of what everyone is trying to do and how you need to fit with that, there's more of a general tendency, I think, to say, okay, well, what's the big picture here, and how can we work together to solve problems? I guess we really don't explore that aspect of it enough, because that's what I immediately went to when you were explaining that. But just specifically in the Dvořák, what was the biggest challenge for you?
The first movement is pretty viola heavy. I'm the type, I really like to just like sit and be the middle voice of something and not be like the super flashy one. But the viola did have some flashy parts. So
right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning. So that was a little different than I was used to.
Yeah.
And I really had to like be the soloist from the get-go. I was like, oh, okay, let's go. And also just all of the things that come with a string quartet that's different from ensemble playing. Like intonation-wise, kind of it all blends together. Like you get, like once you have multiple parts to a section, you get an orchestral sound, but you really have to be careful about every single pitch, making it perfectly in tune, every single rhythm, because it's just so much more exposed.
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of indistinctness in an orchestral sound, certainly with a younger orchestra, and I think that starts to make the difference. You get in more and more professional circles, and you realize everybody's got that kind of sense.
Yes.
And if you're a little bit out of tune, you know it, and everybody around you knows it. We're not quite at that really polished stage with the youth symphony, but I think you could probably feel that when you're playing with the regular symphony members. Yeah, because Grace and a number of our top students have had opportunities to play alongside with the Long Bay Symphony, and that's just one of the opportunities we provide in addition to what the Youth Symphony itself does, just to give students professional experience that they can put on their resume and have for going to college. That's a big advantage.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I still think about it sometimes. Oh my god, so good.
Yeah. So what's going back to chamber music? What sort of dream piece do you have in mind? Like, if you want to sink your teeth into another big quartet.
I really like Shostakovich 8 Quartet.
Yeah.
That's just so cool.
Yeah, my oldest daughter did that one. That's how I got to know it very well. She did it at Governor's School.
Really, it's just so metal.
Yeah.
I think it would be fun.
And I think it's nice to deal with the sort of folksy, lush sounds of Dvořák. But I think even today it's probably more appealing to try and present that more edgy element of strings, because people don't think of it that way. You know, now there are a lot of string quartets out there that have been doing that kind of thing for a while, but the general public doesn't think about it. You don't generally get to do it, but Shostakovich and then, of course, Bartók.
Yes, Dvořák.
Yeah, that's great.
I feel like if one day we played that at a Long Bay concert, the first time my parents would hear it, they'd be like, that was different than what I was expecting.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think it opens ears and makes people think about it. I think the best thing about it to me is that when an audience hears something, if they're getting it conveyed to them in an emotional way and in an intentional way, then they're responding to it. Even if they are a little put off by it. It's like, that's a little, it's almost like violence in a play. And they sense that. So I think all of it's good. I mean, to be effective, it's not always going to be soft and cushy and billowy, and life's not like that. So.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate your coming out and talking. I just wanted, as I mentioned, the audience to, get a little bit of a personal take on each of you before they hear the quartet. Well, thank you, and
thank you so much.
We'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, I'm here today with Gabbi Smith, who is the second violinist in the Dvořák Quartet that you're going to hear some more of in a few minutes. And Gabbi, I appreciate your coming out today. And I note that you are the youngest member of the quartet, right? That you
Yes.
have finished your 9th grade year, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
pretty young. So, and we were talking earlier about the fact that you come from a musical family. So,
Yes.
yeah, give me a little sketch. You don't have to be exhaustive, but just give me some idea of how you got into it through that musical family.
So, well, I think the way I got into the violin aspect, is because, well, I guess my family wanted our family to have a piano trio, and both of my brothers went for the cello and the piano, and so I had the violin, but that's how I didn't really choose it, since I started when I was 2 years old.
Oh,
so,
well, yeah, you don't really choose too much.
Yes, but so, and then I think also the generation, I'm the 4th generation in my family to play the violin. So I think that's another aspect of how I came to be a violinist.
Yeah, and I think you were telling me your great-grandfather was a prominent instructor in the schools and started a solo and ensemble program in that area where he was. And I think your grandfather was concertmaster of a regional orchestra up north, and of course your parents both are active. And I was curious, as far as your violin, like, did you have a little tiny violin ready to go, or did they have to buy one for you? Like, did they save?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's just, I know it's too far back to remember, but there's always that, you call Char Music and get a 1/16 or something.
I think I started actually with a sponge as my violin. Just with
and we just soaked it up. Sorry, I couldn't help the pun.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. But so I think a lot of kids started with just little boxes, just to practice the motion of it all. But yeah, so it's been a big leap. Now you've done, of course, how many years have you been in the Youth Symphony?
I think about 3 years.
Okay, all right. And I remember you've pretty much run the gamut. I mean, you played the Accolade Concerto, right?
Yes.
As a concerto winner, and of course you've done this and other chamber music. You got a nice dual activity as being not only in this Dvořák quartet, but in the Mozart oboe quartet, which was fun.
Yes.
And then of course a lot of orchestral repertoire. So of all of that, what is your favorite type of music making?
Not necessarily just solos. Those are my least favorite, in the sense that I love playing with others and just the rush of the music coming together and creating something even more beautiful than I could create on my own.
It's funny because that's been a rather uniform sentiment throughout the group and other groups too. And I think that's the best thing about it, is this silver lining aspect that we have initiated lots of chamber music because of COVID. It's really opened up a lot of awareness of that, the love of coming together, and it's the fact that you have to come together in an active way, as opposed to following one person like me. Do it this way. You guys meet and discuss and rehearse passages until you all feel them together, and it seems to be the kind of thing people really enjoy. So, well, what was your favorite aspect of it, just of the Dvořák? Let's say just the Dvořák. But what was the most fun thing about putting that together?
I think figuring out where each solo part in the piece went together, so that then we could communicate through everything, and then we could decide who's more following, but how we could back them up more. I think that was fun, just figuring that out. Yeah,
I think as I think back on young chamber groups, I'm so struck by how just to get started, that at the outset, that's so hard, because no one is used to taking charge.
Yeah.
And so 1, 2, 3, now just breathe, and everyone will come in.
Yeah.
And I've seen you guys blossom that way. I mean, it's just a natural start. Everybody comes together and plays. So so what do you look forward to playing in the future? I know you probably have all spoken about the same pieces, but any particular Because I've heard talk about, I guess the Shostakovich Eighth Quartet came up.
Yes, that would be really fun.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to get into a more steely edge of string playing. I mean, the other stuff is really great. But I think also the precision of doing a classical quartet can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. Well, and there's lots to enjoy. But sadly, you are going to be leaving us and going back to Charleston, where you lived for a while, right?
Yes, we lived there for 8 years after we came from Colorado originally.
So, as far as a youth symphony activity, you don't really have anything else to compare your experiences here to, because I mean you were a 7th grader.
Yes, sir. The only thing I have, which could be a big thing, is every year when I was first starting out, and I continue to do it now, we've been going to summer music camps, and that has brought in chamber music, orchestra, solo things, like everything. So I think I've taken those experiences and also put it with this. I think that could be a way to compare, but I think this has been really good to get to know these people more, for longer than just a week.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I'm confident that when you go down to Charleston, they'll be, and hopefully you will be well positioned with all of what you've been able to do here.
Oh, yes.
To get fully into that mix. Is that absolute technical skill is one thing, but just like you were talking about at the beginning, just playing a solo is one set of skills. You just do your thing and make sure everything is in tune or whatever you need to do. But playing together is an entirely different thing.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. We're going to miss you quite a bit,
you.
but maybe we can bring you up to join up with this group
I hope
and do something again. Well, great. Well, thank you for coming out, and we'll be back in just a minute. Hi, I'm here now with Isabella Yee, who's the first violinist in the Dvořák Quartet that you're going to hear some of in just a minute. I think, Isabella, you're one of our, I don't know about success stories, but nice finds in that in an area like this, a lot of people move in, and this is just your second year here, right? Yeah, I thought I had that right. But you and your family moved here for work at one of the medical institutions in town, and the nice thing about it is, we found out about that from your parents, and we have, how many you have? Are there 6 of you?
Oh yes, there's 6 of us in total. A lot.
And we're looking for a youth symphony. We're looking for a piano teacher, and it's a source of pride in an area like this that many of us have helped to grow. That yes, we have this program. Oh yes, we have this teacher, and that kind of thing. So we were really pleased to be able not only to set you guys up with things you need, but the fact that we have an institution, and then you can become a part of it and be a great asset to what we do as well. So first of all, tell me a little bit about your family and your musical background, because now I'm not sure if either of your parents is particularly musical.
No.
I didn't gather that from talking to them initially. So how is it that all of your siblings are that practice?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So tell me about how that happened.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I'm honored to be able to have this opportunity.
Sure.
I started violin as a small child. I was about 4 years old. My dad was still going to school up in Morgantown, which was about 3 hours from where we are initially from in West Virginia. And my mom decided that she wanted to learn the violin herself. So my mom went out and found this little country teacher, and so she rented like this cheap violin, and she brought it home, and I fell in love. And my mom, obviously I don't really remember much, I was 4, but my mom told me that I picked it up, and I just didn't want to stop playing it. So eventually what we did was every other weekend we would go up to Morgantown, the 3 hours, to visit my dad, and so we started going to a teacher up there. And so every other weekend when we went up there, I would also have a lesson. I started with Miss Mary Wilson, a Suzuki teacher, very phenomenal at the West Virginia State University, I believe, up in Morgantown, and it just took off from there.
That's great. But how about the entire family? That's a big project.
Yes. So for the entire family, I think it was just inherent. So obviously my parents...
So you were the starter for this.
Yeah, I was the starter. I will say my mom and my grandmother do play a little bit of piano, so they know like basic chords and stuff. It's not like they don't know what music is. But, so several years after starting violin, my mom thought it would be good for me to put me in piano lessons. So when I was about 7, I was put into piano, and then about that time, they decided to go ahead and start my brother too. So he started playing violin and piano, and then after that, we just all kind of picked it up, and it was easy because as we grew out of our instruments, we pass it down to the younger ones.
That's really neat. Yeah, but I really applaud you all for, and especially your parents, for having that perseverance, because in a busy school day, it's very hard to just fit that in, and the fact that they could keep it up with all the kids in the family.
Yeah.
But like I'm putting forth, I guess you guys, that fed off of one another. It's like you're following by example.
Oh yeah.
So that's
and
really
I think
neat.
a lot of it too just came from it being something we all mutually enjoyed. I don't think any of us ever felt like we were forced or pressured to play the instrument because of our parents or because of our older siblings. All of us, we really enjoy practicing. Like Lexi too, she loves sitting at the piano. Her teachers, or Dr. Powell's already given her Joplin and Debussy preludes, and so she's just going at it, and she loves it. And then me too, even as children, like we all really, our parents didn't really have to like ask us to practice. It was just kind of a thing that we wanted to ourselves.
Yeah. I think anything that promotes certain creative thinking, it's so hard this day and age. With the passive attitude that's brought on by technology, it's so easy to virtually do everything. You witness it online, but to actually have the patience to figure out problems like that, it's much easier with a physical thing like sports.
Oh, yeah.
But when you have to not only do physical things, but you have to think to make it work and deal with those moments, those practice points that you're going to have to go back over 10, 20, 30 times and have the discipline to get past that, through that piece and then on to the next piece. It does a lot for your creative thinking, I think, and your perseverance. So that's amazing. So so you've, like I think all of the others I've interviewed, you've been involved through the Youth Symphony and doing a concerto, doing chamber music, and then of course playing a lot of orchestral things. But what is your favorite type of music making of all of that?
Oh, that's really hard. I feel like right now, my favorite is definitely chamber.
Yeah.
Chamber is so involved, and then it's really minimalistic, so it's really intimate. So you get to know the players, and then you get to grow as a group, not just by yourself, not individually, and then it's a really great connection, and I think that really helps with developing your musical skills too. It's a really great blessing, and that's personally my favorite.
Yeah, well, just so you know, everyone else has said the same thing.
It's just so much fun.
Yeah, and it's been a real silver lining for us, as I've mentioned in other interviews, that we were forced into this somewhat in order to make a productive year for the students, but then realized, oh my gosh, how did we not emphasize this more? Because I think the best thing about it is, for doing orchestral things particularly, maybe to an extent solo things, but for orchestral, being a better chamber musician, it just helps, because, it's what I call radar. You get your radar out and you understand everything else that's going on much more than just kind of sitting there doing your one part. So I guess that was kind of a no-brainer answer. Everyone feels the same way, particularly after doing a piece like the Dvořák.
Oh, yeah. That was just such a fun piece to learn.
Yeah. So what was the hardest thing about putting that piece together for you?
I feel like one of the hardest things was because chamber was brand new, and then we only had like a couple coachings. It was a little bit hard at the beginning to kind of figure out the group and figure out what needed to be done first, how to tackle our time, how to manage our time effectively, and how to make our rehearsals as productive as possible in the beginning. But then once we got to know each other as a group, and once we all figured out our weak points and our strong points, and we really learned how to communicate while we were playing, the quartet really grew from there. And then from there, it was really just refining how we were going to play it.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I've talked to the others too about other pieces beyond, and it's clear that you guys have been communicating, because of course Shostakovich and what was the other one that somebody mentioned, the Smetana Quartet, which is really accessible. I mean, that's some of that's really, really popular. I mean, the average, non-classical music listener would know one of the
yeah.
movements, But and then Bartok, of course. But I think it's good to explore these more modern composers because I think music is about more than just being beautiful and cushy. It's also about being edgy, and I mean that's an artistic statement in itself. So, well, tell me a little bit about your plans for, say, the summer and going on into next year.
Well, for the summer, as you know, I'm going to be traveling to Vermont for about a month to participate in the Green Mountain Chamber Music Festival. I'm really excited for that. My teacher he teaches both viola and violin. He's the associate professor of viola at Boston University. And so I'm going to be doing a chamber music intensive there. We've already decided on the Haydn's Quartet in E-flat major, The Joke. I think that's going to be really fun. That's going to be a really good experience for me too. I feel like it'll be a great way to push myself and kind of put myself out there too, because I'll be with so many other experienced musicians and experienced faculty members. And then as far as my plans go, I just graduated, so I'm taking a gap year. I'm going to apply this fall, and my plans are to hopefully go to a conservatory. I feel like my reach school would probably be Cleveland.
That's my alma mater. That's where I did my undergraduate. Yeah, it's still a great place. So, and others that you were thinking of?
Others I was thinking of, they're kind of all over the place, but Boston University.
Sure.
I feel like that's really good. And then I've taken a look at Vanderbilt and Belmont. I feel like those definitely would have some solid options. John Hopkins. And then I have considered the Jacobs School of Music. Might be a little bit too broad right now. Maybe for graduate if I pursue it and I get in, but... Yeah,
it's tough, and I think everybody finds their part in the balance, But what I really liked about Cleveland, about the Institute, was it was a small school. And you know everybody, and me as a young conductor, I was putting together things all the time, and it's also there's a sort of a Midwest mentality that's no nonsense. It's very easy when you get on either of the coasts there's lots of activity, so you got to get by with that activity. But in Cleveland, it's really a town with great stuff. I love Cleveland. And, it just had like a great art museum and one of the greatest orchestras in the world. And that work ethic, I think, was so strong. It's just...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any sense of that, like the legendary nature of like the old Cleveland Orchestra. My favorite story was when Daniel Majeski was concertmaster. And there was a guy had newly gotten into the first violin section, and he wasn't necessarily schooled in that way, and he was a little bit disdainful because George Zell, the old conductor, was very, very ticky. And so he during a break in rehearsal, he said, "Well, Danny, you want that note? How long do you want that note? Do you want it 7/16?" Or 30 seconds, and I loved it. It was just the greatest diss. And he turned around and said, "Just follow me." So for all the technical pickiness, it all comes down to common sense. But to really, anyway, I love Cleveland. I love that idea of really working hard and getting it just the way you want it. So, but any of those places would be great opportunities. So. But so your gap year is really nice, like a free year, because you've technically done all your coursework for your high school degree, and so you have a free year. You've done it early, and so you've got this free year before you would have been going to college anyway. So it's a perfect time to kind of get all polished and have time to really think about what you want to do, where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's great. And then you'll be around here for another year, so that's nice. Yeah. Well, it's great to talk to you, and it's great to have you as part of this program, and particularly I was just so pleased to hear the four of you come together in that Dvořák quartet, because it's just such a different experience, and one that we had not done enough of, and so I think it came to great results with not only the Dvořák Quartet, but of course we had a wind octet and several other quartets and trios and so on, and I think all the musicians grew from that. So it's definitely something we will keep plugged in as part of our full curriculum. So, well, it's great to get a chance to talk to you today, and look forward to many more performances in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.